We're going to have our final roster tomorrow morning. Once we get on the plane, we can't, that's it, right?
Craig Counsell's waiting until the very last minute on who's going to Japan, so I guess that means spring training performances do matter, or don't they? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is the Setup Man, and I am Kyle Stanley, and I would like to first of all say, before we get into everything about spring training, does it matter, does it not matter, what is the roster going to look like for Japan, I'd like to first of all let you know that we are going to have a live space on X. If you're on X, make sure you're there Wednesday at 7:30 Central. So, be there. We're going to probably be doing a lot of reacting on who's going to Japan, who's not going to Japan, and what that might mean, especially for the stateside opener starting on March 27th in Arizona. And speaking of Japan, you don't have to watch the game alone. You get to watch with me and our Setup Man crew member, Sean Hendrickson. That's right. We are going to be going live for you on opening day and game 2. Listen, I'm the one sacrificing here. That is 3 a.m. my time, California. Sean, he's on the East Coast at 6 a.m. That's like what time I wake up every single day because I got a toddler. If you are ready to watch this thing before work, or if you have a night shift, or maybe you're not working that day, jump onto YouTube. We're going to be live. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to do that with Sean. Can't wait to have you guys not only watch, but we might even invite a few of you on stage with us to watch the game. And a quick Cubs note before we get into the actual spring training cuts and what's looking like for the 31-man roster going to Japan. Shota Imanaga made his final start of the spring, at least before the opener in Japan, and very interesting. 3 2/3 is the line, 4 runs, but what you might not see in that line is the fact that he was actually removed from the second inning and then went back out there for the third inning. That's right, there is a spring training rule that allows you to do that. Makes a lot of sense because as a starting pitcher, if you're wanting to go in and make sure you're sitting for a little bit, go back out there, but also make sure you're not throwing 30, 40 pitches in one inning. That's the rule in spring training. So Shota Imanaga, while he did have a rough second inning, he was scoreless in the first, scoreless in the third, and scoreless in the fourth. Gave up 2 home runs in the second inning. He will be the opening day starter. I would be shocked if Shota Imanaga goes past the 4th inning on the opening day in Tokyo. Why? Because the Cubs have loaded up, and they're going to load up on relievers for these 2 games. And that brings me to the first round here, the first segment here, which is going to be what are the spring training cuts? What is the roster looking like? And on Sunday, it was reported that more cuts were made, including Cade Horton, Brandon Hughes, Carlos Perez, Moises Ballesteros, Nicky Lopez, Ben Cowles, and Travis Jankowski. And the shocker here, I believe, is Nicky Lopez. He was 9 for 20 in the spring, and you just kind of figured that he would be a backup infielder, but this probably leads you to believe that Matt Shaw will indeed go to Japan. I know Craig Counsell earlier today said there's no news on that. They want to make sure that he's completely healthy. Shaw went out, and he had a great game on Monday, so for that reason, you got to imagine that he's probably going to go. I was surprised they made that decision on Nicky Lopez so early, because what if Shaw wasn't going to Japan? Then do you regret not putting Nicky Lopez on the Japan roster? I don't know. I think a lot of people just kind of assumed that Lopez was going to be a taxi guy, and now he's not. And by the way, I am not going to spend a bunch of time talking about who I think the 31 men are that are going to Japan. I want to let you know that Locked On did a great job of kind of forecasting this. So go check out their video, Locked On Cubs. It was right around the 19-minute mark as I have it up here. It was actually about 18:30. I'll link it down below in the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast. The only difference is because they released this essentially on Sunday, or they recorded on Sunday, I should say, they didn't have the information that Brandon Hughes was now sent back down to minor league camp. That means that there is an opening on the taxi squad. I believe that Ben Brown will be slotted in as a reliever and Tyson Miller will go as a taxi. That's a bold prediction. I don't think that is going, I'm not 90% on that. I'm probably only 30% on that, but I think that's what's best. I think Ben Brown should be a reliever. I think he should be in Japan. I think he should come in a high leverage situation. He's not going to start. It's going to be Shota, then Steele, and then a bunch of relievers after that. And if you have a guy like Ray, who's going to be your swingman, then why not let Ben Brown come in and throw 98 in the 6th inning when you are going to be facing Mookie, then Freddie, then Shohei? That's my thoughts. And then put Tyson Miller in as a taxi guy, because the chances of him actually getting any sort of work, unless it's because one side or the other is a blowout, to me seems very low right now given how his spring has gone. Now, when they come back stateside and open up against the Diamondbacks March 27th, does Ben Brown stay on this roster? Well, stay tuned to the end of this when we talk about do spring training performances and stats actually matter. Setup Nation, I want to take a quick break so that you know how you can support our channel and wear some cool swag like this. We've teamed up with Obvious Shirts to give you a chance to have your very own Setup Man shirt or hat. Pick from 3 different types of shirts or my personal favorite, the trucker hat. Go to the link in the description of this video and podcast to claim your Setup Man apparel. And thank you so much for supporting our channel. And moving on, Kyle Tucker, in case you missed it, hit his first home run of spring training as a Cub, got his first hit as a Cub. A lot of people freaking out about this. He was 0 for 20 going into it, but I just want to remind you, spring training for this guy does not matter. I want to remind you of a little something that happened back in 2023. Dansby Swanson, going into his last 2 spring training games, was hitting 0.59. Everyone was freaking out. He just signed the 7-year, $177 million contract. Everyone was wondering what's wrong with Dansby Swanson. And then in his final 2 spring games, he hit 2 home runs. And he went into the first 28 games of that year in the regular season hitting .306 with an .826 OPS. For guys like Dansby Swanson, for guys like Kyle Tucker, for really anyone who has a locked-in position, a locked-in spot on this team, it doesn't matter. Kyle Tucker is going out there and he's working on getting his timing down. He's working on pitch recognition. He's working on maybe little adjustments, maybe little things. There are things that he's trying to get back into game shape in, but that's what spring training is for. It's not the results. It's the getting back into game action. I can think about just about any player can tell you that if they go into a season, a preseason especially, and they just start getting hit after hit in the beginning of a preseason, it's typically just like, hey, I got lucky. My timing was right on as soon as I started. Most guys need that time to get their timing down. Now, you look at guys like PCA. You look at guys like, okay, even though Nicky Lopez got cut, he was hitting 450. Kevin Alcantara, all these guys. Yes, those are some of the guys that have been working a lot, probably during the spring as well, that have been saying like, okay, I've already been working on my timing. I'm kind of there. Kyle Tucker, because of the injury, because of a lot of things, because he's a star, because he has that natural talent as well, he's going to go in and he's just going to be like, I'm going to work on that probably during spring training and work on a little bit in batting practice. When I was there for spring training, he wasn't even taking live hitting practice until about day 3 or 4 of position players showing up. Meanwhile, you saw guys like Ian Happ, you saw guys like PCA, you saw Michael Busch, all these guys doing it on day 1. So there's just going to be these guys that go in and they know their rhythm. They know what they need to do to get ready. And Kyle Tucker, I assure you, is one of those guys. He knows what his routine is. He's a top 10 positional player in baseball. With that being said, it's a relief to see Kyle Tucker get a hit. It's a relief to see him square up a ball. I did a breakdown of that swing on our shorts. I'll link it below. He has been so close the last 2 or 3 games to hitting a home run, to making sure that he leaves spring with a base hit, that, again, it was just one of those things. It was going to happen. To be worried about this would be it would, to me, worrying about this kind of situation is like saying, going into your final exam of the year, going back to school, right? Your final day of the exam, and you have 100% in that class already. You could bomb this. You could not show up for the final day of the exam and still have an A in that class and walk away fine. It's like worrying about studying your face off to go into that exam so you can do well, even though you know if you bomb it, you're still going to have an A. That's the way I kind of look at Kyle Tucker spring training. Really, any of the regulars. Dansby Swanson isn't having that great of a spring offensively. Ian Happ doesn't have a single home run. Seiya finally hit his first home run. You're not worried about any of these guys because they know how to do it during the regular season. Just because Kyle Tucker is new with the Cubs, there's that little bit of extra pressure from the fan standpoint, so don't worry. But who does it matter for? Let's talk about that here in this final topic here. Guys like Brad Keller. Guys like Nicky Lopez, who got cut. Guys like Brandon Hughes, who just got cut. Guys like Vidal Brujan, Gage Workman. Why does it matter for them? Well, because they're fringe players. It's very simple. These are guys that have to prove themselves. These are guys that, Gage Workman, he's in a really interesting spot, and it's actually benefiting him probably at this point right now. Being a Rule 5 guy, he has to be on the team or he gets shipped back to Detroit, and the Tigers have to pay the Cubs $50,000 for him to go back there. But he still has to perform. If he was hitting a $180 right now during spring, he's probably not making this team. But he's lighting it on fire. Vidal Brujan has been playing well as well. And with all the attributes that come with them, they had to show them off during spring training. Whereas you kind of wish that PCA wouldn't be as crazy on the base paths during spring training, if we're being completely honest, because you want to save those legs for the year. You know what he's going to do. The Cubs need to see those things. The Cubs coaches especially need to see those things from guys like Vidal Brujan, from guys like Gage Workman. We hear he has a great glove. Show us that in a game. And he's shown that. We heard he has a huge power bat from the left side. Show us that. Now, we've also heard that he strikes out a bunch. So show us that you've improved on that a little bit. And then what type of pitchers are they actually looking at? We did 2 breakdowns. I'm going to flash them on your screen. This was from actually going into, I want to say, Friday's game, so it's not updated. But this is the kind of stuff that you're really interested in. How are they doing against Major League ready arms versus how are they doing against non-Major League ready arms? Guys like Gage Workman were not doing so well against Major League ready arms. So you want to see more reps like that where you can say, okay, now this can translate potentially to the regular season because he is performing well against these guys that have pitched in the last, call it 3 or 4 years, and pitched at a higher level. The guy that I am wondering about if it matters is Ben Brown. Now, he proved himself last year. He did get injured. We thought he might make the team out of spring, though, because of how good of a spring he had because of Justin Steele's injury. He did make it on day 2 of the regular season. But when you look at Ben Brown, he has options. And there's a lot of guys on this team that don't have options that you wonder if the Cubs will say, well, let's just give them a shot going into the season. Brad Keller, Tyson Miller, Caleb Thielbar, maybe Keegan Thompson, probably Julian Merriweather. These are the guys that when you only have 8 bullpen spots and you need to secure 3 of those for the Ryan Presleys, Porter Hodges, and Ryan Braziers of the world, and then you also need to have some version of a swingman in there. Well, now you really only have 4 spots left. Is Ben Brown going to be one of those guys in the bullpen? Is he maybe even going to be a 5th starter? And then you look at that, and then Colin Ray is probably at this point the 5th starter. So there becomes very limited options for a guy like Ben Brown. So does the fact that he's not performing in spring training at the level of which you would want to see compared to what he did last year, both in spring training and the regular season, is that hurting him right now? Is it an actual factor that Craig Counsell and crew look at this and they say, well, maybe he just needs more innings in the minors to really come all the way back? Reports have been, and again, we can't see this on marquee. It's very frustrating that as a fan, we don't know what the mile an hour on the fastball is, but we've been hearing reports of 96. We saw 97, 98 a lot of the time during the season last year. So does he still have strength to rebuild? Does he still have reps to need? And that is the real question right now. Does this impact Ben Brown? The performances of the guys that are going to be going to Japan, the performances of the guys that are probably going to make the 26-man roster, including a guy like Gage Workman, it mattered. Ben Brown, you know he's going to be a significant contributor to the regular season at some level at some point, but does he start the year in AAA because he has options, because a lot of other guys don't? Let me know what you think in the comments. Mainly also because there's a lot of off days in April. I believe every Thursday in April is off. So there's not that necessary pressure of having 5 starters every single week. You can probably get away with 4 plus a bullpen game or 4 plus a swingman kind of game in the month of April and let Ben Brown go get those reps in AAA. It's crazy to say because I do believe that at the end of the day, Ben Brown is going to be one of the more reliable guys on this team, whether it's the bullpen or in a starter's role. We just have to be potentially patient due to the fact that this is how the roster is constructed right now. You can bark at Jed Hoyer for this. You can be upset at the organization, but there's a business side of this. And if there's a chance, just for example, if there's a chance that Brad Keller has come all the way back from where he was at in 2019, where he was a rookie with the Royals and, throwing eating up innings, throwing in the mid-90s. He's touching 98 this spring. If Brad Keller gets, say, cut and has this minor league opt-out option, which is what his contract does, and then goes to another team, call it the Brewers, and he's now shoving against the Cubs during the regular season, you're going to wonder, well, why didn't we just give him a shot in April? And that's where this comes down to, is there's these guys that you just gotta think the organization wants to at least see them in a little bit of the regular season before they make that decision. That's a guy that's really easy to DFA. Ben Brown is really easy to opt down to the minor leagues to start the season. If all goes well and Brad Keller pitches extremely well, and then you can bring up Ben Brown when you really need him, that's exciting. That's really exciting because now you got a flamethrower in Brad Keller doing his thing, and then another flamethrower coming up in Ben Brown, and it's just gas on gas. So let me know where you're at on all that. The business side of baseball complicates this game. You want to just put the 26 guys out there that you know are going to do the best job, but it's not that simple sometimes. All right, that's going to do it for me here on The Setup Man. Spring training doesn't matter for most, matters for a few guys. I'm going to go put my arm on ice.